If you want to grasp the extent of the extreme social decay that is spreading throughout the United States, all you have to do is take a stroll through the streets of our largest cities. You don't even need to venture into the worst areas to witness the absurdity of citizens who are corroding and destroying our communities from within. In this video, we will show you the shocking reality, even in the finest neighborhoods of Washington. Society is plagued by misery and disease, and it's evident everywhere you look. New footage reveals countless needles littering the ground just blocks away from the White House. Homeless encampments have taken over our national parks, and the foreclosure rate has skyrocketed to unprecedented levels. This is not confined to one city, it is happening in many other areas that were once prosperous and socially stable. Unfortunately, the pace of decay is terrifying, and it will only accelerate as economic conditions deteriorate from bad to catastrophic in 2023. We have much to discuss in this video, but before we proceed, we implore you to support our work by giving it a thumbs up and subscribing. Some may find it hard to believe, but at one point, Philadelphia was one of the greatest cities in the world. However, today, Benjamin Franklin's city is filled with prime examples of the social madness that permeates the entire country. On Twitter, a user shared a video capturing dozens of people from different backgrounds collapsing on the sidewalks while others, clearly under the influence of illegal substances, remained in a catatonic state. After years of neglect, it's no surprise that this is happening in Philadelphia. But just a block away from the White House, a video shared by Benny Johnson exposed scenes that seem straight out of a zombie movie. Dozens of homeless encampments scattered throughout the city, even in international parks. Johnson, incredulous, witnessed the appalling public health problems, human waste, used needles, and trash piled everywhere. Shattered car windows on the streets of DC posed a threat to passing citizens. Even in front of St. John's Cathedral, garbage dominated the landscape. Until 2017, Johnson hadn't seen a single tent near public buildings. Speaking to local residents, it became clear that people do not feel safe, and they report new problems emerging daily. Local reports revealed a staggering 36% increase in serious crimes, of which 14% resulted in fatalities, since January 2022. Simultaneously, the rate of substance abuse-related diseases skyrocketed by almost 70%. Disease, decay, and a disregard for this nation are driving it straight into ruin. This is an apt metaphor for a country, emphasized Johnson. On the West Coast, the situation is no different. Golden, once considered one of the best cities in the United States, has transformed into a dystopia. Store owners in Zarp sleep with personal defense tools under their pillows, and citizens must act as their own law enforcement. In an interview with Ashno Review, the owner of Bayers revealed that he slept in his store for 7 months with multiple personal defense tools at hand. Within a year, his shop was ravaged by theft, assault, and vandalism. The understaffed law enforcement in Portland was nowhere to be found, and when $25,000 worth of bicycle parts were stolen, the insurer, Tritech, was ready to abandon ship. They stated that if he filed another claim, they would cancel his coverage. So, he now pays $1,200 every 3 months, only to be told that he has to replace everything himself. Meanwhile, the authorities are nowhere to be seen. So, it's a free-for-all. In August 2022, this lifelong resident of Portland packed up and decided to leave the city. By then, the building owner told me it wasn't worth it anymore, said Bayers. The graffiti, property damage, constant theft, and ignored official reports were no longer worth it. He broke a 3-year lease contract, and now the building stands empty, said the business owner. That's life in Portland. People shamelessly take advantage of the absence of law enforcement. This trend is spreading everywhere. It's not just Portland's bike shops. Grocery store workers are being attacked because we have addicts who brazenly enter and conduct lightning raids. More and more people are leaving, Bayers emphasized. And when people like me and other business owners close up and leave, you don't have an economy, and everything keeps getting worse as businesses abandon urban cores. Believe it or not, it used to be the largest hub for the U.S. automotive industry just a few decades ago. But that changed rapidly after automation and foreign manufacturing reconfigured the entire industry, resulting in a drastic decline in jobs. Today, the poverty rate in cities is a staggering 39.8% of the population. Meanwhile, the severe delinquency rate is the second highest in the country. Urban decay continues to wreak havoc in Detroit. While it is recovering from bankruptcy since the early 2000s, it has lost nearly 30% of its population. As conditions deteriorate, the nearby city of Flint, Michigan, has also experienced a decline in the American manufacturing industry and the financial ruin of many contributing businesses, resulting in the loss of hundreds of thousands of middle-class jobs. In the past decade alone, Flint's population has rapidly declined at a rate of 12.2% annually. The city has infamously suffered the consequences of improperly treated drinking water, which failed to remove lead contaminants from old pipes. Now, over 40% of its residents live below the poverty line, and that rate continues to grow each passing year. Same has occurred in St. Louis, Missouri, and Albany, Georgia. Soaring robbery rates have driven thousands of businesses out, and those that survived have relocated their operations elsewhere. Unemployment rates in these cities have reached alarming levels. Official data indicates that approximately 25% and 32% of citizens currently living in St. Louis and Albany, respectively, are either poor or near poor. In New York, levels of poverty have become so overwhelming that their Homeless Crisis Command Center reports that the city has called in the National Guard to address the homelessness crisis, overwhelming shelters and homeless facilities. As staff is unable to cope with the surge, National Guard reservists are being deployed to assist with the day-to-day operations of many shelters, including managing capacity, food distribution, and aiding with staffing shortages. Currently, over 65,000 individuals live in New York City shelters, of which nearly 13,000 became homeless in the past year, according to the Department of Homeless Services. Can you recall any other period in history when government officials of any city called in the National Guard because homelessness had reached unprecedented levels? This crisis is unfolding at an alarming rate. Unfortunately, desperate people living on the streets are resorting to desperate measures to survive. The media reports that even in some of the nicer neighborhoods of the Big Apple, people are stealing items and reselling them just a couple of blocks away from where the theft occurred. And those are actually the less severe cases happening out there. According to Joe Hacken, professor of urban futures at Chapman University and executive director of the Order Institute, the social decay undermining the foundations of our cities is systemic and worsening over time. When my grandparents immigrated to New York from Russia over a century ago, they found in the city of paradise a path to a better life, he wrote. However, life was tough. It was crowded and always one paycheck away from poverty. My relatives were poor, but so was everyone else. Over time, they all bought houses or apartments and entered the middle class. The current urban promise is very different, points out the researcher. New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles are no longer cities of aspiration, they are increasingly defined by an almost feudal hierarchy. The wealthy live well-protected lives with private security and catered by local cafes and trendy clubs. Meanwhile, the working class struggles to pay rent and lacks a tangible path to a better life, often leading them to migrate elsewhere. Catton emphasizes that crime rates are skyrocketing everywhere, and homelessness, once an exception, is becoming more widespread. Those same streets that were once said to be paved with gold are now filled with discarded needles, excrement, and graffiti, adds the expert. The reality is that urban poverty, deeply rooted in the United States, defined by places where 30% or more of the population lives below the poverty line, has skyrocketed from 1,000 to 6,400 neighborhoods since 2017. Even controlled media outlets admit that in the last 2 decades, major cities have shifted from being engines of growth and opportunity to places defined by growing inequality. Wealth and income disparity are becoming the norm. For example, in the technological paradise of San Francisco, which records the worst levels of inequality in California, the top 5% of households earn an average annual income of $808,105, while the poorest 20% earn a meager $16,000 annually. According to the old saying that the air of the city makes one free, it too often means freedom to be poor, to experience endemic housing shortage, the collapse of public infrastructure, and the increasing abandonment in a state where stealing anything worth less than $1,000 is no longer considered a serious offense. Property theft, including a significant rise in car thefts since 2019, has occurred. Walgreens closed over 30 stores in San Francisco due to the steep increase in retail theft cases and weak law enforcement. Meanwhile, small businesses in New York experienced a 222% increase in robberies last year. As cities crumble, they become no-go zones for investors and businesses. Only 10% of companies are interested in investing in large urban areas, reveals the expert. Cities do not thrive by having more trendy cafes, fashionable restaurants, and avant-garde boutiques. They need safe streets, decent schools, and jobs for middle-class and working-class families, emphasizes. Unfortunately, it seems that our leaders are not too concerned about restoring the economic and social balance that this country needs to start thriving again. Year after year, our social decline intensifies, and our major cities continue to crumble around us. If you love the United States, you should be completely outraged by what is happening to our country. What do you think our founding fathers would say if they could see what our cities have become? Undoubtedly, they would be deeply ashamed of us, and we should be deeply ashamed of ourselves too, because we should never have allowed such a beloved country to fall so low. In conclusion, the alarming state of decay and social decline that is plaguing our cities across the United States is a clear indicator of a society in crisis. The once prosperous and vibrant urban landscapes have transformed into landscapes of inequality, poverty, and despair. The growing disparity between the rich and the working class, the rampant crime rates, and the escalating homelessness crisis are undeniable signs of a broken system. Our cities, which were once beacons of opportunity and hope, are now emblematic of neglect, mismanagement, and a disregard for the well-being of the people. The consequences of this decay go beyond crumbling infrastructure and economic decline. They erode the very fabric of our society, leaving communities fractured and individuals struggling to survive. It is high time for us to confront this reality and demand change. Our leaders must prioritize the revitalization of our cities, investing in essential services, affordable housing, education, and job opportunities. We need comprehensive solutions that address the root causes of urban decay and uplift the lives of all citizens, not just a privileged few. Let us not forget the vision and values upon which this nation was built. We owe it to our founders, to ourselves, and to future generations to reclaim the promise of our cities, where every person has the opportunity to thrive and succeed. Together, we can reverse the trajectory of decline and rebuild cities that embody equality, prosperity, and a brighter future for all.